Well, thank you for joining us. And today we're going to talk about marriage.
Yes.
We have Pastor Kent and his wife Janet with us today. Our first question is, how did you meet?
Oh my. California. We met in California.
I was pastoring the singles department of a church, big church out in California. Had about 400 young adults in this class that I pastored, and we had a retreat. And so I was in charge of all the administrative, and we had this retreat, and I was carrying all these boxes in, and I walked into the hotel where the retreat was going to take place.
How old are you at that time?
I was 26.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I carried him, but I got to think about the sound system and about the worship team, and I got all this stuff going on. And these two ladies were there ahead of me, and I walked in and greeted them, and they gave me their names. And I walked by, and I went back to put down my boxes, and I thought, she was really cute. What did she say her name was? So I came back and said, hey, I'm sorry, I forgot your name. And her answer was?
My name's Janet Barefoot. Have you ever heard of Alzheimer's?
That's her opening line. She accused me of having a
Memory issue.
memory issue.
I was
she
kind of joking.
She turned and walked
sarcastic.
away, and I thought, who is this chick? And I didn't forget her name, and that was kind of how we started off back when we were 26 years old.
Dating.
And then we had a girl get injured on this trip, and they called me as I was in charge to come take care of her. She ended up going into the hospital to get x-rays. Janet was a RN at that time, a registered nurse. And so she came with me to the emergency room while this girl was back getting x-rays and everything done.
We had about an hour to sit and chat and talk about our families, our backgrounds, and I think that's where the interest really was sparked. And when we got back to LA, we started dating.
That's when it started.
Yeah.
So you both grew up in Minnesota?
No, I'm from Minnesota. I was out in California
Okay.
working in this church, and Janet's from Alaska.
I call Alaska my home because that's where I spent most of my childhood.
Alaska. How long you dating?
In my mind, too long. Because we were both 26, I think, when we met.
Yeah.
And so
Same age.
fairly soon after dating him, I knew this was a guy I could spend the rest of my life with. But I wasn't going to, push him to make a decision.
Yeah.
And it took him a lot longer to decide that he wanted to marry me.
I hear some people say you need at least dating like 9 months. And how long are you dating?
So we've been dating about 15 months. And
Longer than 9
so
months.
my studies, I have a master's in marriage and family counseling.
Yeah.
So I was studying counseling and marriages, and I had
Wow.
that's what I was doing for my whole master's degree, and study all these broken marriages, dysfunctional marriages, abusive marriages, and I was counseling these people. So my life was involved with marriage pain.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I'm dating this girl, wondering if I want to marry her, and I was not romantic with her. I'm like, okay, I don't want that.
Right.
I want a marriage that works. I want a marriage that's joyful. And so I was very cautious before I would step in.
And you had a good marriage modeled from your mom and dad, so you knew you wanted a marriage, that
That was
harmonious,
healthy
they got
and
along
worked well.
Yeah.
And I realized there were not a lot of those.
Yeah. That's
And-
kind of rare, I think.
No, and so I was very eyes wide open. And then as a Christian, I thought, well, if I'm ever going to hear from God,
Yeah.
it should be now. I mean, not on what you eat or where you,
Yeah.
but in who I marry, that would be reasonable to say, God, speak to me. And I heard nothing. I pray, nothing. I went to counseling, I got nothing. I'm like,
Wow. So you wait.
so I'm going to wait.
He was
Wow.
very cautious. Meanwhile, I love the guy. I think this could really work, but
Well, he wait.
And so I waited, and I got nothing, and I thought, well, I'm just going to wait. And then she dumped me.
there came a point where I was like, I think I'm trying to change myself, who I am, so that he'll marry me. And I've never done that for anybody. I like who I am. I'm secure in who I am.
Yeah.
So this isn't healthy for me. So I just told him,
Yeah.
I don't think I can do this anymore. I don't
Yeah.
want to pressure you.
Yeah.
But so I kind of broke up with him. And he said, well, could we just like take, was it 4 weeks off we took?
Yeah, just
Can we just break
don't
up for-
leave the state.
He said,
Just-
I need to think this through, but we won't be in touch with each other for 4 weeks. I said, sure, I can do that.
So
good
I was
idea.
leading
Makes
a team from our church that did a musical working with churches in Scotland and England. So I went over there to set up an entire tour for about 40 people. So I was on this airplane from LA to London, all by myself in the dark, somewhere over who knows where, the Atlantic or Iceland or something like that. I remember my prayer, I was like, okay, God, you've got 11 hours to talk to me because I'm mad. And you've been too quiet. It's like, and I felt the Lord speak to me. I'm in this airplane, mask on, in the dark, at night, and I
Yeah,
felt the Lord go,
quiet.
what do you want?
Lord said, what do you want?
What do you want? And I'm like,
What do you say?
what do you want? I said, I want you to talk to me. He's like, no, what do you want? And I went, what do I want?
Yeah.
I want to marry her. It's like the Lord, like a buddy, kind of went, all right, go for it. And I'm like, seriously? That's how God Almighty, not thus saith the Lord, not some, I'm looking out the window for a cross or something. It's like, not go for it. And that was it. That was God speaking to me. And I thought, what? And as I traveled Europe and traveled London and Scotland, setting up this tour, lots of train rides, I came back going, yeah. Because there's a scripture.
Because if you not go for it, you're going to lose her.
Absolutely.
He
Yeah.
would have.
4 weeks later.
4 weeks. And,
Yeah.
and I had a friend I talked to in the middle of this woman who was both our friends, and she said, how are you doing? I said, really bad. This is incredibly hard for me. And she goes, that's good. That's good. You need to suffer.
You should feel that.
Yeah, you would say, you'd be the kind that would say that. She goes, you need to suffer. I go, well, thanks a lot. She goes, you're about to lose one of the most wonderful women that have ever walked the face of this earth because you're too stupid to see it. And I'm like, well, thank you for your compassion and your, but she was right. And I came back and said, this is not a proposal, but we have a future together.
Wow.
And that was kind of the start. And then we got engaged about 3 weeks later, I think.
Yeah.
We had fun.
And we're getting ready to celebrate 37 years.
37 years. Pretty amazing.
Wow.
To my best friend, my lover, my partner, we have had an incredible...
Yeah.
Our dating was tricky because of me. But after we got engaged,
Just wonderful.
Once we made the commitment, we
Yeah.
knew we're going to get married. It was like,
we
we're
have
all in.
had an
for you,
incredibly
you're for me.
healthy, wonderful
Aww.
marriage.
I love this story. Don't you?
I do. I think it's absolutely tremendous that you had the knowledge of how the dysfunctional marriages work.
Yeah.
And to
Most
have that
people don't.
foundation to come into your marriage and then to have modeled a very good marriage. And I just have to commend you that you knew who you were. That's amazing because I think
amazing.
most people don't know who they are.
Yeah.
And they get,
My gosh.
that's why it's a dysfunctional marriage. Because the illusion of most TV shows or let's say a love story, you complete me. No.
Right.
You need to come incomplete.
Right.
So what a beautiful.
So the way I look at that, I love that. Because people say, you have to find in Spanish, they talk about the other half of your orange.
Medio naranja,
A medio
they say.
naranja. That you find, and we talk about being complete and being someone who fulfills you. You find that perfect person. I'm not
So
sure
it's
there
kind of
is
like a
perfect
half a
person.
person with a half a person makes the whole.
Yeah.
And
You
we
have to give
couldn't
up
disagree
some.
more.
We
Yeah.
say a whole person
Yeah.
plus a whole person makes a whole marriage.
Yeah.
And that's where the Bible says the two become one. And I think as we find our wholeness, there were girls, as I was singles pastor, 400 young adults, there were young ladies that wanted to marry me, but they were unhealthy.
They were looking for someone.
And they were
to
like, if I
complete them.
marry you, then I'll be happy. And I thought, no way. I had this nightmare that I'd marry somebody like that. And a guy likes the fact of, I'm going to fulfill someone. I'm going to complete someone. I'm going to rescue someone. And I go, they're going to wake up 3 years down the road. I just kind of picture somebody waking up going, I'm not happy. I've married the wrong guy. I thought, no. When I met Janet, she was just happy. She was just joyful. She was confident. She liked herself. And I thought, I could share life with this woman and do great. I don't have to do something that I really believe only God can really fill that gap in somebody. And I thought, if they look to me, today or tomorrow, they're going to be disappointed because that's not mine to fill. And we've been two whole people that have walked through a lot of life.
Have some moment you don't like her or you don't like him,
Those happen.
and what do you do with that?
So I would call a lot of those happen with maybe a conflict, which life has conflicts. I
Conflicts,
heard
yeah.
someone say that where there are two people, you have conflicts because you have his desires, my desires. And at some point they're going to conflict, right?
Yeah.
Simple one is, what restaurant do you want to go to? Well, that's really simple, but we've had conflicts where
Sure.
we didn't really agree
Ever
on
from
something.
fighting?
We've never yelled. I don't feel like it's, why would you need to yell at the person
Because
you
not
love
go,
at?
not go anywhere.
But-
We yell.
Most people do, and that's
people,
that's
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
That's not our style.
But I think for Kent and me, what we established early on in our relationship was even in a conflict, I'm for you, you're for me. And the key is understanding each other.
Yeah.
So you want to communicate to understand, not to win an argument, you know.
Oh my gosh.
And Kent often kind of did that analogy of like a rose in the center,
So
like
if-
between us.
Here's our rose.
Yeah. And so that's intimacy. And what we want to guard in our marriage is intimacy. So if I'm at conflict with Kent or I disagree with something, if I'm thinking of the rose, my goal is not to win over him, win that argument, because if I do, that rose wilts a little bit.
Yeah.
And if he wins an argument, that intimacy wilts.
Wow.
We both lose. But if we're constantly thinking of, and he would often, when we'd be upset or arguing or something, he'd reach for my hand. And initially I would be
She'd
like,
pull away.
I don't want you holding my hand.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, I'm saying that I'm for you. It doesn't
I'm just
matter
really
that we
mad
get-
at you right
I
now.
might be mad at you, but I still love you and I'm not leaving. And, you know, sort of like a solidarity. We're together in this. And I got used to that. And so it's like not a problem now to reach and touch each other, even if we're like upset. So I think you have to cultivate that. And if people don't take time to cultivate it, we're pretty selfish people as a general rule, right? And if I want my way, you want your way, and we're not willing to look at what's best for the two of us, or how can we understand each other rather than, I think I'm right and I don't care what you think. That's where you lose, right?
That is so beautiful.
Wow.
Do you share that when you speak and when you counsel
Yeah, if
people?
I'm teaching on relationships or teaching, I like to teach in schools. The ministry we were a part of called Youth with a Mission had schools, and we would teach a week to maybe 25 to 30 students.
Usually young people, high
And
school
we
graduates, or
teach
maybe
on-
Oh my
college
gosh.
graduates.
on relationships.
I think
And so-
everybody need to hear this. And also, I think countries that like leaders need to hear this too. Don't
Well,
you think?
You think of these things work if you have, I mean, if you have two presidents or two kings and they come together and they realize we are for peace, we are for prosperity in each other, but we have issues to deal with. So we look and we go, there's a problem. There's a disagreement. And we've had disagreements that have lasted
understand.
6 months, you know, where we just don't agree. We are not on the same page. But that's okay. We're two people. And there is no one in the world that's for me as much as Janet. No one. If I were hurt, there's nobody who would fight for me, defend me like her. And I know that.
And
Even when I go, I don't like what she's doing, I don't like the way this happened, that's just life.
And what's interesting, this communication course, we call it interpersonal relationships that we would teach with these students. Many of them would come away from that going, I didn't really know how to talk to somebody else that I had a conflict with, or we say listening is a great act of love. How many people really listen? You don't find many people who will listen. We want to be heard, or especially in a conflict, to simply listen to the other person to try to understand them makes them feel valued. So we taught skills like that, and these students would go away saying, wow, now I know how to, even my mom and dad, communicate better with them, or with my boss, or with my siblings, friends. It works.
And it should be taught. We should know that just by growing up. We should see it in our parents. We should learn it growing up with our brothers and sisters. It should be, sometimes I feel like I'm teaching A plus B And you could see it feels so simple, and they go, I've never seen this before. And I go, well, that's kind of sad because people grow up.
In dysfunctional
I talked to a couple,
families.
and I go, the goal is not to win. He goes, of course it's to win. There's a problem, somebody
my
wins,
God,
somebody
yes.
loses, and I'm going to win. I'm not going to lose. I'm going,
Yes.
how's that working for you? How's that working with your wife that you want to beat her up in arguments every time?
gosh.
I go, that's a problem. And I think of the conflicts we've had. One of the rules is to listen and understand before you respond.
Understand.
I don't want to listen. I don't want to understand. I want her to agree with me. That's what I want. I want to show her that I'm right. That's what I want.
I think most people, like
Sure.
99% people probably
Sure.
like
But
this.
it doesn't work.
Yeah.
That hurts a person who
Yeah.
I care deeply about.
Yeah.
And so we've tried to discipline ourselves. I think of when we were looking to move from the mission field, from the Dominican Republic, back home, we were on different pages.
Yep.
And it took us months
Yep.
to get on the same page. But it happened through this, where she finally said, I don't understand you. And I'm like, no, you don't. And so we decided to,
And there's a skill that we teach in that course called a shared meaning. And so I actually the next morning said to him, I think we need to have a shared meaning. We both knew what it meant.
and we laughed. It's
We
kind of
need-
like,
you
okay,
know,
let's use this
It's basically
technique.
where you listen to the person and then you say, well, what I'm hearing you say is, and you try to put in your own words what you heard. And they can say, yeah, that's right. Or, no, I didn't really mean that. And they can clarify. And so it really helps you hear the person when you try to kind of say back to them, this is what I'm hearing. They can say, yeah, you're hearing me right. Or, no, that's not what I meant. You know, so it was that we went round and round and round till I finally
Couple hours,
understood where he was coming from. It
And
helped.
then she's like,
Didn't change my mind instantly, but it helped.
she's like, oh, I think I get you. And it had us moving out of the Dominican Republic, moving back to Minnesota.
Don't you think you guys both very lucky because you grew up with a loving family? Janet probably also grew up with, because most people I think we grew up with pain. And I remember when I grew up and when the town we have about 3,000 people in our small town, and at night sometimes go boom 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 boom, and means some emergency.
Oh,
and
wow.
most like a woman jump in the well, woman die that way, and a woman drink the poison, and go hunt.
There's so much pain.
Oh my
So
God,
much
you know,
pain.
and man kind of control woman so badly. Like I really want to leave that town very badly. That's the only
Yeah.
thing I grew up. I don't want to, but sometimes we carry that on. We carry on when we married. We don't know. We don't. So I never hear this story. You know, to respect and I always want to win like this. I don't want a man control me, and nobody even want to hug me. Say I want to hold my hand and say we want to talk like what Pastor Ken said like that. So we both fighting. I mean in China, New China, like I think a big city people. When you go to college, you learn a lot. That's different from a village. Not too many people
Sure.
go to school like that. We learn things in the very hard way. And Mary once killed the one. At the first one, killed the one. I always say killed the one. He died. That's a joke.
Laugh here.
Well, he died in my hand, right? And my third one, Jeff, we're not married. We're not married yet. We're together 11 years. Now I think he kind of waiting for the God's voice.
你看这